2, 1. Hello, we're live. Welcome back here. Tropical Nomad, 6:30 every Monday. Speak Up Monday, Destination Indonesia. Now tonight, my guest Faye Wongso. Welcome to the show, Faye.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So welcome. So for those of you, who are thinking about maybe startup business here in Bali or Indonesia, for those of you who are in the co-working space or the co-working movement, tonight will be a really powerful episode for you. And for those people who are really interested in the title, like from Africa, to like leader or creator of the Indonesia's largest startup.
It's pretty clickbait, isn't it?
I know. It's like Africa, but she was born in Jakarta. What the heck? So tonight you're going to meet within 2 minutes of meeting her at a networking dinner organized by our mutual friend Adrian Keat, who's watching this. Good day, mate. So within 2 minutes, I was so inspired by who you are. Actually, the fact that you've been through this whole aid work movement from the bottom to the top, and came up thinking, well, impact. It's all about impact, and what I'm doing now isn't doing that. So how is it that I can have more impact? And that question then drove the rest of your life about what we're about to find out about. So we're about to go deep. My name is Robert Ian Bonnick, the tourism architect. Now we're going live on Instagram Live, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live. And feel free to join our community. We're here every Monday. Next week we have a wonderful panel from Health Hub Bali, so make sure you tune in for that one. But coming back to tonight, so look, Faye, if you can perhaps firstly let people know the name of your 3 companies, then after that we're going to go back into your history, and we'll come back and connect them together.
It's more than 3, but then we can talk about those 3.
Yeah, let's go.
And one is actually not a company. So one is actually the association. So you mentioned about co-working and co-working movement. And actually when I started, after the African bush experience, it was actually with a small co-working space in Sanur. I was actually just a small part of Rumah Sanur Creative Hub at that time, back in 2014, 2015. And it was so damn hard talking about co-working, innovation, startup, entrepreneurship in Indonesia at that time. People can't even Google it because they never heard about it, right? So then together with other co-working players across Indonesia, in early 2016, we took the chance to create the first Co-working Indonesia conference. It was risky because you had to look for sponsors. You didn't know that people would come or not. We could gather 150 people, and then it spinned off into a national association called Co-working Indonesia. So right now, I think we are in more than 300 locations, in more than, 40 cities and districts across Indonesia. Ooh. Co-working players, and I think it's actually more and more. So the reason why I also had my friends here, Patrice and Rama, they're also actually the community builders of their own cities, right? Rama is from Lombok, and then Patrice is from Manado. So wherever we go, we would actually have someone welcoming us. Yeah. Because, when you're talking about ecosystem, then you're also talking about proximity to location. You need something to anchor you. And then from there, you actually, impact your neighborhood, impact your communities. You attract who you are. So there's that sense of locations too. So that's Co-working Indonesia. And then you mentioned about KUMPUL.
Yes. Actually, before we started, she was helping me on the pronunciation to be Indonesian. I can only pronounce like Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, and so there's a few words that you've been adding to my vocabulary and cleaning up my elocution. So
yeah.
I really appreciate that.
I don't know if you've seen some boards, if you're just in case there's tsunami, this is titik kumpul or something like that, the meet-up point. So kumpul is a root word in Indonesian, and it's actually together people or to be together. So we just use something very simple, something Indonesian, because we actually started it in Bali at that time. And like Ichi, with Tropical Nomads, we also would like to engage people who are not just passing through, people who actually really want to invest, to be here, to work here, to have their energy and love here. So KUMPUL started as a small co-working space because we thought, how can I build Indonesia? And I didn't have much. We are not backed up by a conglomerate, not an artist, definitely. So how can we start building Indonesia, and how can we be as powerful as those rich countries around the world, especially in the West? Because Indonesia is actually has a lot of potential. Do you know that we are the biggest archipelago in the world? The biggest.
Yeah.
Not number 2, not number 3, we are the biggest.
Yeah.
You know that we are the biggest Muslim population in the world? Yeah. So it's not the Middle East, it's us. And we have 270 million people. 70% of those are youth, so productive age. So adoption of technology, creativity, innovations is huge here. So Indonesia is very lucrative. So then, but back in 2008, 2009, I found out that entrepreneurship, we were talking about that before with your bro over there. So countries like USA, they say they are the one ruling the world and pretty rich because apparently their entrepreneurship is 14.5% in the population, from the population, right? Singapore, our neighbor here in Southeast Asia, 7 to 8%. And Indonesia was only 0.8% back in 2008. So then that's not enough money, that's not enough economy to actually, roll things out. Then people don't think about innovations. People don't think about how I can solve the problems of society if you are still hungry, right? So I thought with co-working space at that time, it was just like maybe an aquarium that we can test some formula and help our members who are entrepreneurs, freelancers, talents, or owners of small businesses can be successful easier and quicker. So that's how it started, actually.
Wow. Just by the way, this is live TV. For those of you who don't know, we have a guy down here on the floor trying to make one of the microphones work for the guys working on Instagram Live TV. This is what happens. So look, the interesting part is, I mentioned before, my brother Itchy, our brother Itchy. So part of, why we're here is, I love what you said before about, how do we integrate those foreigners who call Bali home or Indonesia home for an extended period of time. Now, Itchy is married. His wife is from Kalimantan, 3 children, 6 dogs. He's going to make me laugh mentioning the dogs. And then me, my partner Marino, I met in Australia, in Sydney. She's from Jakarta. We have 2 children, Indonesian and Australian passports, since we're British at some point. But what we realized, some years ago was that there's opportunities here, to come together, to knowledge share or exchange and create impact projects which uplift humanity, right? And that's something which drives us both immensely. And it's something that we would do whether we're being paid or not. We would do whether we had one leg or one arm. Like we're driven. Our blood is like that, right? So the impact part of you, take us on a journey to describing, where did that come from within you?
I guess since the beginning, so maybe we should explain the title that we put.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So before starting KUMPUL, around maybe more than a decade before that, I actually work with Doctors Without Borders. So in French, I'm not French, so pardon my pronunciation, Médecins Sans Frontières. So I work first in Indonesia, in Ambon, in Maluku, and then after that in Aceh, post tsunami, maybe like 1.5 years, in West Aceh where it was hardest hit. And then after that, I worked in Kashmir, Pakistan, and in Zimbabwe.
There's the African part for those
That's
who
the
wondering,
African
right?
part, in the bush, and that's actually how I met Dennis, my ex-husband. But then we built KUMPUL together. So that's how the African bush actually started, because then it started like to think about how we can create impact, but then more in a more established, non-conflict areas. And after that, we actually went to Yemen before coming to Bali. But why Bali? And Bali is actually because we had some projects in Flores and in South Sulawesi, and Bali was just the headquarters at that time. And then we just stayed. So the everything that I did was actually just always thinking what's the impact of this? So when I graduated, I studied psychology, which is it a bit like far off with what I'm doing right now?
It's completely connected. Keep going. Let's go deeper.
So everything that I did with MSF, actually it was about trauma counseling. It's about psychosocial support at that time. So it's like a past life, right?
Yeah.
But when I graduated, I was offered a job in Jakarta. It's like a car leasing company from the US. Really, really good salary. They're gonna give me a car as a benefit, But then at that time, it just didn't feel right. And at that time, back in early 2000, I don't think we had enough options. We didn't have enough horizons what we could do. I thought at that time, if I wanted to make impact, I had to work with a non-profit. I thought. At that time, working with a profit company, I felt it's just making someone rich, getting richer. So then I chose MSF, and it felt so right. But I was in my 20s. There was this sense of cowboy in me, I want to see the beneficiaries. I want to have some actions on the ground. And I just want to work my ass off, working from 7 a.m. until 1 a.m. in the morning, emergency period, I don't care. I was young. But then you're working with mental health. Then I started to question, a lot of the people I met, it's a luxury if I could meet them twice. Yeah. Mental health sometimes we feel is a first world problem sometimes, a therapy. You meet the same person over and over again for 5 years or 10 years. You don't have that luxury when you have conflict and disasters, in the field. So then when you meet someone, you just bombard them with as much tools as possible. You explain directly what is it happening, it's psychosomatic, how you feel, like how you identify your feelings, how you identify your needs, what's the first aid for mental health, all this breathing technique. Don't get me started, and then he will talk for like 2 hours about breathing technique now. So that's how he found out about my past lives. We started talking about breathing techniques, right?
That's a whole nother interview, guys. In case you're wondering out there, we're going to go into past lives. Not this episode, it's the next one.
So, so that's. Then I thought, okay, this is awesome. I got fulfilled, with whatever it is that I needed when in my 20s. But then I felt, am I just a drop of water in the desert? Am I helping? And after that, it's gone. How I can make a more sustainable impact, because I only have 24 hours. I'm not getting any younger. So then I moved towards development sector. When I was in my 20s, I cursed the development sector. I thought all these boring people only talking about policies, nothing is happening. And
you became one.
And I became one.
you know, like
You grow up, you know.
you know, there's a few things which come up. You know, one is the other. Could you embellish us or you lay some knowledge on us about the facts of Indonesia? I want to turn my chair so the people here can see me as well. And what I found out as well was that Indonesia in the world. So we call it the brain drain, right? So when you're a smart guy or girl growing up in whichever country, and you know you're so smart that you get poached by a foreign country to go there and work, and you get paid more money, you never go back, right? That's it. You're kind of mercenary, bit extreme.
But I disagree about Indonesia.
Let me finish this.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is that Indonesia is the #1 country in the world where, and you're getting right ahead of me, where Indonesians who go out and study and learn incredible things in foreign countries come back and invest that knowledge in Indonesia. They're #1 in the world, which again, another fact which I had no idea about, but now I'm glad that I do.
We are very high with our nationalism, on the verge of stupidity sometimes. We can die for our country, you know. We would. It's okay. But like that, you know, a lot of other countries, their dream is to migrate permanently. You know, they go and then they wish to be like the first generations living abroad in the US, in Canada and all. And I actually talked with some of the government, and then they said actually Indonesians, they stay probably quite a long time, you know, 3 years, 4 years, they got enough knowledge, they got enough network, they studied there, but then their dream is always to come back.
I mean, it speaks
We are
it speaks
awesome.
volumes.
We are just awesome.
You know, it speaks volumes. But okay, well, we're supposed to be having this Q&A, right? So the next question that pops in. So how did you make? Because what I can hear, right, in your 20s, and like most people here, right, they say that men become productive at 50. I'm 52.
This is your most
I'm now going to become productive,
decade. Yeah.
right? But basically, when you track through it, you know, the 20s is all about me. And then eventually you make that journey from me to we, right? So then if I asked you what was that moment or what led up to that moment, because I can hear it in your story too. You know, you're saying you're 22, you're going to work late, you're going to do it, you're doing it, right? But when do you think, if it's pertinent, did you make that journey from me to we?
I think talking to a lot of people and also realizing being Indonesian, even though we are so proud of being Indonesian, we also complain a lot, you know. We think our government sucks, things are not working here, you know, like people from like developed countries, everything is running well over there, you know, other people's field is always greener, right? Then you go and travel, then I felt in many occasions that I felt so grateful that I'm actually born Indonesian, especially as a woman, right? So then I felt also that I enjoyed my work. I think it was also very useful for the people over there. And then I thought, why didn't I do this for Indonesia? I always have that thing also, you know, that I also want to come back and do similar things for Indonesia. But Indonesia fortunately not, at that time, was not a war-torn country, so it's also not the same kind of work that I could do in other countries. And then it's also about, like I said again, the impact, you know, and then you started learning about if you do a little bit and then with the ripple effect, you can actually reach out to a bigger audience, and that's actually the one in the development work. And to be able to do that, you need to engage other parties. And that's also the we part. Because in your 20s, you feel like the world is your oysters and you're invincible, you know. You cannot get sick, you cannot get any bullets through you. You know, your mom, I think if I were my mom, I mean, I have to give it to her, you know. I didn't ask any permission. I would just say, I'm gonna go in 2 weeks' time to a conflict-affected area where there's like still bombings 3 times a day. And then she would be like, okay, be careful. You have to understand, looking like this is not common in Indonesia. I'm small, I look Chinese, I have Western name. So in our identity card, we also have our religion, right?
Yeah.
So people can actually spot you. So I'm minority of minority, basically. So it's very weird for my extended family to see what I did, like what I do, what I did at that time.
You know, Faye, by the way, for those of you who came up for the startup information and the ecosystems, it's coming. Just be patient. That's coming. That's coming. But the question that, you know, that soaks in, which I had the first time I met you, was, you see, because you present as this fearless, very, what's the word? Authentic, congruent. Like, you look like a woman who's not to be trifled with, right? True or true? True or true? True or true? Last time, true or true? True. Right, that's the studio audience. Thank you very much. Glad you're here, right? But you strike me as that. So where did all of this come from? Because you, even now, I feel even more like this invincibility that I feel from you, like this strength, right? Because I love people to know at home and in the studio audience, you know, like, where did that come from? Because you were born in Jakarta, right? So if I asked you then, being a direct question, like, if that's true, where do you think it came from?
I mean, of course, we learned all of this from family, right? I mean, I cannot take that away. My parents never taught me about racism. I didn't know I was different until I was 16. So, because then they put me into a school, like a good school, but then there's a lot of Chinese in it. So when you are part of the majority, you start talking shit about the minority, right? Before I was the minority, so I didn't know. So
I know what that feels like.
And I was like, you know, there's like these things about, oh, don't sit next to her or next to him because he's like this, he's like that, because he's this, like, coming from that tribe. You know, I was like, that doesn't make sense at all. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, you know. So like, why? Like, why is this? Because we never taught you. Racism is taught, right? Yeah. So, and my mom is also the concrete example of creating impact in real life. So she's a psychologist, a certified psychologist from a very good university in Indonesia, the best one, I think, University of Indonesia. And she would give her time working for an orphanage for troubled teenagers for, I don't know, maybe 25 years. She was also giving her time teaching psychology to future priests, you know, between like their gap year. So she does a lot of those things. You remember in school when they teach you about like a moral lessons. Oh, if you see a blind person next to a road and then they want to go across, what do you do? And then like stupid Indonesian exams, they go like, oh, A, you know, you help them get across. B, you just like leave, you know. C, you know, we have all of this multiple choice. I actually saw my mom took a blind person and help, you know, like she stopped everything that she did to help, right? So I think this kind of thing stayed with you. That you don't need religion, you don't need social norms, you don't need things to define you. You just be a good person and create impact.
Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate it. So now for those who came because of the startup and the ecosystem, can we go?
Finally.
I know.
I'm sorry. It was a bit long of a...
She's like, I don't want to talk about me, but we do. We want to know more. So look, so we get an understanding. Your mom was a really pivotal source of your this firmness within you, this strength, this solidarity, this sense of right and wrong, right? Then you went to all these countries in the world, trying to save the world from what it sounds like. And then what you realized was that, hang on a second, I'm trying to do this thing, but I feel like it was a drop of water in the desert. Yeah. So it's like there's other ways that I can do this. And that industry of non-for-profit and for-profit, you started to see, well, for-profit, I've tried a non-for-profit. That's like a drop, as you mentioned. I want to try the for-profit, become part of the institution that I before looked down upon or didn't really want to be any part of. And then you start to make that journey. Okay, all right. So take us, like, how did you get, from there to where you are now, which is, again, the largest startup ecosystem builder in Indonesia? And I met these wonderful people earlier on, you're right there. What is it? The Asian Venture Philanthropic Network. So Asian Venture Philanthropic Network, which I'm really going to check out. I love the sound of it. So how did you make that transition from there to there? And then we'll get into what that actually means and how you actually do it, so people here can learn something.
So after MSF, I joined VSO, which is actually doing skilled volunteering. And I was in charge to create the national strategy for active citizenship. What does it mean? For Indonesian to do something for Indonesia, as simple as that. Using your skills, using your time. So we identify partners in, let's say, areas that needs it, and the overall mission is to combat poverty. So let's say you go to Flores and then you meet a local partner. What is it that you need? Oh, I need agriculture specialist. I need an IT consultant. So normally it will be people like you, coming all the way from Canada, from Australia, from UK, or even from the Philippines, coming to help or to volunteer that time for 1 to 2 years in Flores. But then in the first 6 months, they're a bit useless because of the language, because of the environment, everything. But Indonesian, it was actually not that sexy to volunteer. So the benefit of volunteering was not there yet. So that was actually my work for a few years. It was so fun. Like, I believed in it so much. And then suddenly the donor said, I don't think Indonesia needs us anymore, So it's just being cut off. So then it struck me that how unsustainable nonprofit is. If you just rely on grants and donors, it's very unsustainable. At that time, they said, okay, Indonesia office, you need to be more financially independent. And the strategy was, at that time, to teach us how to write more grant proposals. So at that time, it was not about social enterprises, it's not about business with values, it's not about impact collaborations with enterprises, So then I thought, okay, I'm so passionate about the cause, but nonprofit is definitely not the way. So I was really trying to identify the business model that can enable me to still do impact, but can feed us, and we can talk about money without guilt. Yeah. Because sometimes when we talked about social impact and all these costs that we want to achieve, and then we talked about money, you go like, shh, you shouldn't talk about money. It's very dirty. So I think from the people, so I'm dealing a lot with communities. All these co-working people, they're also very, very strong, have a very strong community sense. They think I'm a capitalist because it's actually very hard sometimes when you have a very intended social cost to make money out of it. But from the corporation sides, the business people, I'm very community-minded, according to them. So actually everything that we do through all of those initiatives that you mentioned before, it's really to merge those worlds. How you can grow your business, and it's actually business with values, because I believe if it's a business with values, you no longer talked about price wars, you no longer talked about, killing your competitors. You can actually grow because you know your values. And if it's an intended social cause with a business model, then you can be more sustainable. You can actually feed yourself and grow too.
That's so important. And a friend who's probably here somewhere, Harold, he has a company. And it's about, for him, for example, turning solar power into electricity and Wi-Fi. Comes with a tablet, a way to connect remote communities. Phenomenal thing. But even with him, many years in business, he's like, well, look, Rob, it's okay to make money when you're doing, doing good things. Your intention is good. It's okay to make money. So there's like this feels like this implicit block that people can have of like, well, I can't do good and make money at the same time, right? I have to. People who make money, they're doing something shady, right? So how did you deal with that one? And people watching, maybe some advice of how they can get over that stumbling block, because I feel that it is a block for a lot of people.
But good business is also doesn't have to be a social impact one. A good business is providing solutions to a problem. So the bigger problem you solve, the more you can leverage. That's all. And you are actually solving other people's problem. So this is what we actually really want the startups to learn, to test. Are you really solving other people's problem, or just your problem, or your hallucinations, your assumptions? Please check your assumptions.
I just saw like a quick head nod. People are like, hallucinations. Yeah, I had a few of those.
No, we were just like talking. I guess that also, if you run a business and it's not profitable, that means you run a hobby.
Yeah. Let's have a quick straw poll, also to see if they're still awake, but they are. They're all, see all these eyes out here, they're looking at you, and they're learning. This is good. So straw poll, how many people here are currently engaged in a startup? Raise your hand. Currently engaged in a startup. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, how many people here have engaged in a startup? Great. How many people here want to have a startup? Okay, for those of you watching it here, the ones who want to have a startup is like the least hands going up. I don't know what that says. The answer should be the most people should start up. So of those people who had startup challenges, so how many of you here, this is hand on heart, we're not filming this part, how many people here would say that your startup failed? Put your hand up. Okay. There's four honest people. That's good. Okay. So let's talk about startups, because I can see there's a few pens out there. So if I asked you maybe three things, so why do startups fail? What would those top three things be for you?
I already mentioned the first one. It's we rely so much on our assumptions that people need our product. So we always have this just to check, market validations and checking, and it's also checking or to understand your audience, right? Whether they really need it or not. So that's one. And then the second one, sometimes also when you grow too fast and you don't have the right vision. So I also met a lot of young people. And right now, I think the pressure is higher for young people to be successful. So you want to be like when you're 21 and you're 23, you're already a CEO or a successful startup, and then you just want to exit and become a billionaire. So if you start something and you already have in mind when you want to exit and how much you want to cash in, don't build it.
Ooh. And look, so there's some people here. So I was on a panel, right? So it was for startups in Indonesia, and it was the Founder Institute, and I'm a mentor for this online how to start up in Indonesia. And I'll put you in touch with him, Samuel, so I'll connect you with him. But I guess the question is then, like, how do you work? So what kind of support do you give startups, and what are you looking for? How do they get into that ecosystem of yours?
Yeah. So let me take you back to 2015, 2016. At that time, everybody is using Gojek, Grab app, yes? Okay. So 2015, even Gojek, at that time our first unicorn, didn't even have an app yet. So let that sink in, right? They had a phone number, they had a landing page, a website. So when you want to deliver something, or you want an object driver to take you, you call that number, and there's like an operator trying to find. So they got all these databases, right? So imagine how hard it was to talk about startups. There was no benchmarking. So people had no idea, right? So then, and at that time, I started a co-working space, like I said. But then I really work with Indonesian kids at that time. And then when I talk to other players like Patrice and maybe Rama in cities that's not Jakarta and not Bali, it's very different. Jakarta and Bali are very different. Jakarta, you talked about property game, office place game, and then Bali, you have the expats, the digital nomads. It's a different knowledge. It's a different buying power. It's just different. So Indonesian entrepreneurs, their pain point, or startup founders, aspiring startup founders, are not workspace, but it's access. Access to program, capacity building, to the right mentors, to the right network, and also to funding. So imagine if you live in a city in Sulawesi or in Kalimantan or in Flores or probably also in Bali, you don't have all of those access. So then, because we have a very strong co-working network, people like Ichi, and it's like, hey, you have your community in your respective area. Why don't we run all of these entrepreneurship programs through you? Because you are the perfect bridge. You know the community, you know the skilled people who are your members, who can be actually the facilitators and mentors. You probably know the government or the corporations around you. So they are the perfect ecosystem builder. So we were using all of those as hubs. So right now, KUMPUL is working with almost 120 hubs in 40 cities across Indonesia. So whatever it is that we do, we run it through all of these ecosystem players, and not limited to co-working players anymore. We have partners with like more than 30 universities on community organizations as well. And then back in 2016, don't talk about accelerator. Don't talk about getting a $1 million or $5 million dollar funding. Don't talk about prototyping, AI, and all of those things. Because then people in a lot of cities in Indonesia, they didn't even know how to convert ideas into business. Into a business ideas. So just like an ideas into a business model. So we started as simple as Startup Weekend. Have you heard about Startup Weekend? So we partner with Techstars. Startup Weekend is actually a curriculum, the most tested curriculum, because they've run it in 1,000 cities across the world. And it's from Friday afternoon until Sunday afternoon that you come in as individuals. You pitch your ideas for 60 seconds, see if people want to join your group, and then in 2 days, being mentored in small groups by design thinking process. And then by the end of the Sunday, you already have your startup, and then you pitch in front of judges. It's a very low commitment activity to see whether this will work out or not. right?
Okay. Yeah.
Have you heard of Tani Hub in Indonesia?
Yeah.
The startup. That started from Startup Weekend. So 99.9% of those participants would not work, of course, because that's actually just a how-to activity.
Yeah.
But then we started from there. We also started something working together with government with 1,000 digital startup movement in Indonesia. So actually, Rama and Patrice was our partner in that city because it was run at that time initially in 10 cities and then gradually to 20 cities across Indonesia. And then that's sort of like that same method, but then stretched to 6 months. So a lot of mentoring, a lot of facilitations, a lot of curriculum that provides access to people on the ground, but we run it through the hubs.
Got it. Well, there's a whole ton of questions that I've got, but we don't have time for. So what we'll do is this. So people in the audience would love to get your feedback. I know there's some people here involved in startups. So we'll get the microphone out pretty soon. And so if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll get the microphone to you. Now, one question while we're doing that is,
Same for the expat community of Bali.
it's the same.
It's the same, but I don't know if you need help, actually.
We need help. All the above.
Indonesia is actually the country that attracted the highest investment during the pandemic, the last 2 years. In the region, sorry, not in the world, but in the region, Southeast Asia, because we do have a big market, like all of the wonderful things I said about Indonesia earlier.
Yeah.
But then the fund was normally being put Series A onwards. So in average, the ticket size is around $100 million. So in total, I think we had like 86 trillion rupiah actually coming in for the last 2 years, and we actually doubling our unicorn level just last year.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
So it's actually growing.
I'm one of the biggest people think that my blood is red and white. I always speak about this, right? The fact that Indonesia is, in my humble opinion, and I've checked this with lots of different eminent people, it is the region of the world that in the next 10, 15, 20 years is set for a huge boom. Stable financially, is self-sufficient, doesn't need to import anything to feed its population. You look at other parts of Europe, the States.
We're working on it.
I know, we're pretty close to it, right? You're not dependent upon gas or any petrochemicals, right? You have that already. Like there's a whole bunch of things that have the best president in the world right now. Don't get me started. I'll never finish, I'll keep going. So I'm going to stop myself, otherwise I will keep going. So let me just see, does anyone have a question? Raise your hand. Where is the microphone? It's over there? Yeah, so this is question time, guys. So I know you do. There you go. Now, as we deliver the microphone to you, just something which I want to comment on, which we had a chat about earlier on, which I think is so important. So this Tri Hita Kadana, I talk about it a lot here in Bali, a way to happiness, way to well-being. It's this triangle. At the top, it's, how does my project, how does my mission, how does my vision, how does my business impact tradition, culture, custom? That's the top of the triangle. Over here is, well, how does my enterprise, business, idea, concept, mission affect the environment, man to environment, sustainability, regenerative? So it's not a I win, you lose. No, that's old paradigm. It's not a we win, they lose. That's also an old paradigm. It's a quadruple win outcome is what we're going for. So yeah, just want to bring that to you. Question, my brother. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sebastian. I'm from
impact is so attached with the culture and where we live, and this is also my comment about digital nomads before. When you just hear when we come to a place and then just transit in a sense, like 2 months, 6 months, and then after that you move around again to another place, and then every time when you are here, you are touched by your surrounding, and you want to make a social impact, and then sometimes you do more harm than good. So I think, like in development sector, that why people actually stay quite long and really try to understand, because what we think is good sometimes is not good for the society. So I think number one skill for social impact is empathy. It's really just to really understanding, how not just like using our own perspective and our own theories. And this is, I think we mentioned it in the networking dinner, and whether we have the goal of giving as a charity, or whether we really can identify strengths and weaknesses and then work together equally. So guys, I gave out this challenge to all the expats here. You say, if you want, I want to help Indonesia, I want to make impact, can you also answer to an Indonesian boss? If someone is actually creating something, a great movement, can you work for them? Or does it have to be always the expat who run things, or to teach, or to be the coach? So that's again like the challenge.
I would add to that as well. We've obviously, the show is almost 300 episodes now, and we've always made sure that you have a good mix of Indonesian, local, Indonesian, Java, expats and foreigners. And the one thing, or one of the things which I've noticed of late, and we spoke about this at that networking dinner as well, was that attitude this like colonial mindset that can come in, and Oki, spent lots of time culturally adjusting businesses moving to Indonesia on this, right? But I just, and I also have conversations with expats about this as well. And the way which I refer to all of this when I chat to Ichi or anyone else here is that you hear me use the word knowledge share, knowledge exchange, co-elevate, right? Not this I'm teaching, I'm coaching, like I know it all, because when you spent enough time here, I've had the good fortune to all sorts of Indonesians from all sorts of areas, including like Mangkua villages, 5-6 hours having this beautiful interaction. There's so much knowledge and wisdom in this country. There's so much knowledge and wisdom in each of us, actually, regardless of where we're from. So this thing about I'm here to teach, no, I'm here to exchange knowledge. And in that we can co-elevate, right? That to me is the key.
And I think the easiest way in terms of creating a movement or startups, because I know that some of you are actually running your startups, are actually trying to find Indonesian partners or co-founders.
Yeah.
I think that's actually quite. I know it's not as easy as it sounds, right? Because even to find co-founders in your own, in our own culture, in our own country, it's difficult to find the one that's actually click, with you. But I believe cultures are actually not the main obstacles. If you have the same visions and if you feel like you're passionate about one thing together, and then your skills complement each other's, you can actually start something together, and maybe that can be like the capital.
Cameron, back to you, brother. Is there a follow-up question or anything that you need to know further?
Thank you for your answer. It's quite clear. So basically, you're also saying that empathy is lacking between maybe expat community and local community, and maybe culture will be a vehicle to bring expat and local more closely together for a better understanding for each other. What do you think about that?
I think it's. I'm not an anthropologist, but in terms of business, it's really to identify, like having a different perspective about strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, if someone from Australia and someone from Bali, the strength is probably a bit different. So then the person, if you can identify the role within that initiatives or the startups where that person can actually fill in that role, that can actually work. But then if you ask, sometimes I feel, let's say you ask a monkey to swim or a fish, you ask them to climb a coconut tree, then you feel like this person is actually not very valuable, but then it's because this is not in the water, because the fish is not in the water. So I think that just that, So culture is not the main obstacles, but it can be in the way. If you're talking about bridging this, right? Again, I feel a lot of the international talents can bring in a good value for Indonesian startup ecosystem, especially Bali, because Indonesia is actually having the lowest tech talent in key APEC countries. We are only 0.2 per 1,000 populations, compared to Singapore, which is like 5.0, right? So then in this digital world, even though you create something that's not really, really digital, you still need someone who understands tech. And then I actually have my friend at the back, Leah. Can you wave? So she's actually the initiator of Girls in Tech in Indonesia.
Ooh.
She's a coder herself. Was.
Wow, I've got a few goose pimples.
So together with her, we are initiating her accelerator, which is a Web3 space for women. Web3 space for women who wants to do projects there and creating impact there. So we push all of this, but then it's still actually not enough tech talents in Indonesia. And if there's this kind of collaborations, I think we can actually create big impact.
Well, there's two things. Firstly, you're going to have to be in this chair pretty soon. You know that, right? You're nodding. Yes, she's in. All right, we're teed up. That's good. The second thing, you'll be great. The second thing is, what you're saying earlier on, about the talent here. The thing which I've noticed is that Indonesians are extremely skillful. If it's like this ability to learn, to pick up something once shown, like most human beings, right? If you tell me, I understand certain amount, but if you show me, then I can then mimic or I can learn from that and improve upon it. So what I find here is that is very powerful. And then when you have, like Nadeem, right, becoming the education minister, to me that's an extremely powerful step in a direction that will set you up for the rest of your life, right? To have one of the smartest minds in Indonesia become the education minister, because education is like blood for the body, right? If you don't have education, then you can't deliver what else comes next. And so it's a very powerful step that Indonesia have made. I haven't seen it in anywhere else in the world to date. Anyway, I'll get off my horse. Otherwise, I won't stop. My brother, question.
Hi there, guys. Hi, my name's Ed. I'm a founder here in Indonesia for a tech platform. And some of the observations that I've seen, particularly around programs or accelerators or incubators that are poised for nationals for Indonesia, seem to cut short at inclusiveness around the expat market or somebody who's bringing in an idea for the country. To sort of go back a couple of steps, when you look at other countries in Europe, they always talk about positive migration. And of course, there's a massive influx of people coming over to Indonesia for whatever reasons, expats being here. So my question really to you is, have you seen or are you sort of championing or aware of this sort of partition between the inclusiveness of expats in a program that's now really tended more for the growing or emerging market for Indonesia?
That's really interesting. We, KUMPUL is actually running 2 batches of accelerator this year. And the first batch is actually about diversity and inclusion, and we didn't include expat in that category. So that's an interesting perspective. So we include female founders, businesses targeting the undeserved populations, disabled communities, or founders from second and third tier cities or outside Java, right? So when you talked about the influx of migrations and expats being here, are we talking about people who has KITAS and KITAP, or people only with tourist visa? Because then I'm talking about investment of being here.
Yeah.
I'm talking about paying tax.
Yeah, so I'm talking about that exactly. So, people who are registered, who are trying to do the right thing. So I know of one startup, for instance, in Jakarta that was addressing pollution.
Yes.
And that was by, I think he was by a national, foreign national who had grown up here. And I think the access that his education was able to give him also gave him access to things like funding, and then later, for his startups to actually emerge. But for people like me, I've been here, 7 years now, so a bit of time, but still not enough time, not enough knowledge, had I been raised here or if I came to school here. So I'm still trying to find my way through a lot of these sort of obstacles as every other Indonesian national would be, I guess. Yeah.
That's a great input. I'm gonna talk about it with my team. But then sometimes it's also about the inequality in terms of the ecosystem. In Indonesia at that time, Indonesian feel still very not at ease to express themselves in terms of like mentoring, to speak up. And then as soon as we bring in those experts in, then it becomes English speaking.
Correct, yeah.
Then I'm all about actually you need to lower it down in a sense, right, to the level where people most comfortable at. Because our vision was actually to push this first, you know. You need all of these positive discriminations. But then I think some of the levels are already there. Because some of our programs for pre-series A, all the founders, they can actually speak English. And it's also a good push, you know, if you want to go global, because we really want to focus on market access. Because if you see, all of our unicorns became unicorns only focusing on Indonesian market alone, right? So you need like that a bit of push. KUMPUL ourselves, we have ecosystem partner in 11 countries across the world, and we are actually cooking that up, you know, especially for APAC or Southeast Asia first, maybe to have like a consortium of like a global accelerator. So then people coming into that program can directly access other markets or other mentors or other experts. And then suddenly you're like, you know, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, let's say Philippines, you know.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Then that's something that we're thinking about too. But it's all about that, you know, having that balance.
Yeah. You know, we'll continue this privately, because this is that's a great question, which opens up something which is really important, you know, of unity and diversity through, and you got it, my brother. I love that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask 2 quick questions, and then we'll wrap this part of it. Then we'll switch off cameras. By the way, if you're at home and you should be here. God dang. Because then what we do is we switch off the camera, and then we have a little private session, which you're going to miss out on because you're not here. So come, Tropical Nomad, easy way to do it. Meet some of these incredible people here and actually really benefit, because that conversation is I want to go deeper. We will later. But 2 questions. All right, so one is digital nomad visa. I know that you've been working with government for many years in this area, so that's one question. And the next question will be G20. What do you see for Indonesia coming in the related sector of startups, co-working, right? So they're the 2 questions that I'm going to lay at your feet.
You have tough questions, man. What? G20?
I want her to be on next week. So women in tech, right? Amazing. I've actually heard of it before, and someone mentioned it, Rob, you should have the lady from Women in Tech on the show. And I was like, that's right, I should. Now she's here. You're scaring her off by saying, Rob, these questions are so hard. You know, 90%, Rob, this is a great experience. I've loved being here. Let's do it again next week. In fact, let's do it every week for the next year. That's what you should be saying.
So digital nomad visa, right? So I'm all for it. I think it's good that it's finally happening, because I know a lot of people want to be here and they actually want to contribute, you know. And then I've been saying to, not to the government, I mean, who the hell am I? Just complain in private groups. That
that's a lie.
Just regulate it, you know. Yeah. Regulate it, so then we can actually partner. We can identify skills, and then we can tax all of you as well. I'm a firm believer in paying tax, so yeah. So then let's see if it's happening. I think they really want to push it forward. Before, just coming here, I think it's not only about the tax, it's also about the intention of coming here. If they say that come to Bali and work from Bali, if you come here only because we are cheap and we have the beach and coconut, then I don't have any interest in connecting with you, really. But if you are here to really connect, to get to know what's the problem, because hey, problem is money, man. If you come to an area where a lot of problems, that means it's a lot of opportunities. And if you really want to connect with people who actually really know the problem, that's us who are already living here. And us, it doesn't have to be Indonesian. It can also be someone like this.
You know, I don't know how to take that. You know, someone like this.
Someone like this.
Like,
Meaning
I
that
don't know.
you can be.
She's coming back. She's coming back.
I know you're
I'm out of
like.
here. Mic drop. I'm out of here. Hold a second. I've never walked out on the show.
No, you don't have Indonesian passport yet. So.
Marina, help.
Yes. His kids are.
And my wife.
I mean, enough investment in Indonesia, right? To be able to say that your blood is red and white, you said.
That's true, it is. What? No, not now. Later.
So that's about digital nomad visa. I hope it's happening, because then maybe we can do something more fruitful. Yeah. You know, that we are not just as a passing through or a cheap place to be, to extend your runway while you're here, right?
I really agree with that, by the way.
Yeah. So because like we all know, getting a kitas or kitap are also so painful. Right? It's not that I have friends who really, really want to have that, so then they can actually contribute more permanently, and they can't, you know. So then the second one is about G20.
G20 and the future of Indonesia in your space.
So I think this is the right time for Indonesia to, like you said, I think Indonesia will be the future. Many people, I don't know if you like how many of you are like, let's say from Europe or from the US, you go there, like I went there in 2018, and from, you know, the Department of State was actually taking us there to travel to 5 countries to learn about creative economy and entrepreneurship incubator. And then I think many people actually didn't know Indonesia. They know Bali, but not Indonesia. And we are number 4, you know, in the world in terms of populations and all of those things. The biggest archipelago in the world, the biggest Muslim population in the world, the driving force of economy in Southeast Asia, actually, right? We are head-to-head to Singapore in terms of number of unicorns, so we're actually not bad. So G20 actually brings the attention of the world to Indonesia, and then if a lot of initiatives are actually being driven also by the Ministry of ICT, because I think digital economy is one of the agenda that we actually really want to push. Innovation, startups, and if you know, there are a lot of branches of G20 initiatives. We have W20 for like women initiatives. We have Y20 for youth initiatives. We have the Innovation 20, you know, for all the startup founders. So a lot of those streams, and I think this is a very good opportunity for Indonesia to show the world, you know, about our talents, our commitment, and the tagline is recover stronger together, right?
Yes. Yeah. You know, I love that. And I said that was the last question. I lied. Another question just came. What can I do? The questions come through me, not from me. I didn't write anything down. What else do you want me to do? We ask questions, Q&A.
Like divine intervention.
It just keeps coming.
Oh my God.
This is the last one, I promise. So, like, and it's a really easy one. So, what would you say, and you can choose one or more, but maybe one is good, the biggest challenges, right, facing Indonesia moving forward, and what do you think the solutions might be?
Indonesia moving forward, I think talent is a big thing for us. I mentioned that 70% of our population is youth, but we do have problems. Decades earlier, I know we have like this Minister of Education coming from like a tech, like a modern background, but then you can't actually flip it just like that, right? So this is why initiatives, if it's like running it like an old business, it will take us hundreds of years to actually catch up. So initiatives, innovations from startup founders like you guys are actually really needed, and digital intervention is also needed to just increase this level of like capacity building. And then like that is also make us more like equal in a sense, to be the global citizens and then to partner. And then yes, okay, we have all of these things about the laws, the regulations that we still need to advocate. But I think in terms of talents, why KUMPUL's vision is actually to provide, to distribute equal access of opportunities to entrepreneurs around Indonesia, because we believe that not only Jakarta or the privilege can produce, unicorn startup founders in Indonesia. We believe that one time, we actually had this program, the first ever online startup weekend, tribute to COVID-19, back in 2020. 1,500 people applied from 29 provinces in Indonesia. Indonesia has 34 provinces, right? So it's almost all. And then the top 3 business ideas and startups being chosen were not even from Java Island, not from Jakarta. So the first one was actually from NTB, Rama, from Lombok. He's from Lombok. And I think the second one was from Kalimantan, and then Sulawesi. So then we felt like, if being given the access of the same curriculum, the same mentor, the same capacity building, the same access, there's a lot of gems across Indonesia. And then we are just like building all this like funneling, and it can be a great force.
Love it. I have, so the way that we close this Q&A, we are coming to the end, Faye. The way that we close this is we give you an opportunity to close with something that might be close to your heart, something that comes in or through you, even from you is okay as well, that you'd like to leave people with in about 2 minutes. So you've got a bit of time to think about it. So before we go there, I just want to say, before I thank you, there's a company, everyone here actually, a company called Bayamia. So Bayamia, Bayamia.com. Opened recently by a friend of mine who'll be on the show pretty soon. And it's like the largest business to business, like an Alibaba for Indonesia. Right, he might even be here. I'm not sure if he's here. He said he would come, but he might be here. And incredible, right, what he's done. He'll be on the show pretty soon. But this opens up for one of the first times this incredible opportunity for Indonesian startups and businesses to go direct to market without the middleman involved, and go direct to the buyer internationally. And it's business to business, also business to consumer. They call it WeCommerce. WeCommerce. So check out that one. The other thing that I want to do is just say I've had so much fun with you. Like you're like a sister. I feel like when your brother and sister kind of pinch each other,
we can
nudge each other. But if I did it now, people watching it might get the wrong idea and say that guy's a bully. It's like, what? Why does he keep on pinching her and knocking her for and nudging her? But that's what I feel. Like the 2 minutes that I connected with you, you feel things about people as I feel things about you. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're such an amazing person.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad. We're going to do this. We're going to do more of this. You know that, don't you? But this is just the beginning. She's like, oh man, really? just the beginning. I really want to thank Itchy, you, Brother Guzman from Tropical Nomad. It's an incredible partnership that we have. Itchy is my brother from the same mother, maybe different mother. If you haven't met Itchy yet from Tropical Nomad, Itchy Yamada, a fantastic human being. If you haven't, you should, right? So that's why we do it here at Tropical Nomad every week, because we share the same vision, which is your vision, about how do we connect, create trusted networks for people who are serious about contributing something very good to Indonesia, be they foreigner, expat, or local, how we can provide these pathways to facilitate that through a true platform of knowledge sharing and co-elevation, right? That's what turns us on. That's what we love, and that's why Speak Up Monday is here, and that's why Tourism Architect, what I do for a living, is here as well, is to facilitate that. And I see you as being such an amazing hub, you know, like you're like a node, you know, if we're talking about nodes
that
on a
can
network,
blow up.
You're like a node that can blow up, but not in an explosive way, in a very good way, right? You remind me of, you're like a node for Indonesia. And what I love about you is that you have the whole English thing going on, you have the Indonesian, obviously, so you're like me, you're like a bridge, so you're able to connect the two.
We are hybrid people.
Hybrid, I'm using that word from now on.
Okay, so you want that closing statement thing from me?
Yeah,
No?
I reckon we could do that, and then we'll give you a round of applause afterwards.
Okay, so just the one last thing. I said before, I'm a firm believer of paying tax, but this because it's actually something about paying forward. We talked about this before the session, right? One day, I met with a very high-level mentor, the investor of like all this big, he's a big hotshot. And he said to me, but Faye, real mentors don't have time. Meaning that, you know, sometimes you pay it forward because you actually talk, you open up channels for people, you give your time to just to share about your mistakes and your journey so other people don't have to go through the same path, right? So that's mentoring for me. So he said that, and I don't believe it. So I really want to show that community or paying forward actually means growth and business. Because right now, when we talked about community, it's all about soft values. So it's like social is so liquid, it's altruism, you know. And then when you talked about corporations or business and all, okay, it's money, it's profit, it's return of investment, you know. So I want to actually make that kind of bridge with our initiatives moving forward. How to connect those two. Because I believe that's actually the key. Community-led growth. Community means business, and actually Coworking Indonesia, we will have our conference in August in Malang in East Java, and that's actually the theme that we will push through. So co-working is not just about the space anymore. It's about how you can engage the community, activate, and then we want to show also for businesses, startups, initiatives, corporations that community means business. And it can lead you to growth.
Round of applause for Faye Wongso, everybody. You know, like, wow. Ooh, so next week, Health Hub Bali, The Future of Health, Part 3. Make sure you don't miss that one. And just thanks again to everybody, to you, the studio audience. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you.